Hello everyone, welcome to my second collage making video. This time I'm going to be making a collage in the theme of the weird and the wonderful, as it's October, of course. And today I thought I would also talk about one of my favourite horror films of all time, and maybe have a general chit-chat about anything else that comes to mind. So, as before, this is more or less a video of me basically rambling whilst I make a collage. Nothing professional, planned or polished, just a simple video and, with any luck, a calm one, while you join me in the process of however this collage turns out. So, I love Halloween, I love horror films, I love dark things, as anyone that knows me also knows that I struggle wearing colour. I think it's safe to say that even my art is a little on the dark side too. I can't help it. I've always been drawn to dark things. And so in terms of films, there are so many that I love, but my absolute favourite horror of all time has to be The Exorcist. I first watched The Exorcist when I was about 12 years old, on my own, in our living room. One of the first semi-traumatic and yet exciting times of my life. Still to this day, it scares the hell out of me. It's one of the most unnerving films I've ever seen, and yet the most spectacular. As I've grown up and revisited the film over the years, I've come to appreciate it in other ways, such as its cinematic qualities, the sound effects, the music, acting. I was also intrigued by the making of the film and the absolutely bizarre ways that the director would get a scene. For example, apparently he would shoot off a gun in the background in order to get the most realistic shot of an actor jumping out of their skin. Pretty mental, really. Absolutely abusive, and, well, what a horrid director. But apart from that, it is a really great film. So, reasons for my interest in the film. I come from a Catholic family on my father's side, and although I didn't have a staunch Catholic upbringing, Catholicism had definitely played a big part in my life, including the fact that I also attended a Catholic primary school for 7 years. So, although I am an atheist and have considered myself to be an atheist most of my life now, for anyone that was ever exposed to this religion from a young age, there is this weird, I don't know, innate kind of fear of God, the devil, and everything that comes with Catholicism. Initially, because you're young and you believe everything when you're young, you cannot help but believe it. You become intrigued by it, and of course, you also become scared of it. You believe that there is a God and that there is good in the world, and you believe that there is a devil, and so that there is evil and sin, etc. Until, of course, you grow up and, with any luck, become educated enough to realise that the Bible is essentially a storybook. The Exorcist is probably one of the only films for me that seems to reach down into that deepest, darkest pit of my Catholic childhood psyche, where something such as being possessed by the devil felt all a bit too real. Or at least something that, as a child, I believed could actually happen. And after all, it's the childhood fears that tend to stay with us one way or another. Irrational as they were, it's your childhood fears. They're the ones that they came for us in our nightmares when we were young and vulnerable. Also, I was always interested in the supernatural, including ghosts, possession, demons, satanic themes, witches and folklore. But I'm pretty sure that those interests really stem from the Catholic background. After all, historically, it's the church that warned us about these things in order to control people. For example, if you were a woman misbehaving in the eyes of society, you were very likely to be simply labelled a witch and either drowned or burnt at the stake, as many women were persecuted throughout the centuries. Unfortunately, not much has changed. There are still plenty of witch hunts in this day and age. But with regards to The Exorcist, its context, the story itself is something that just works for me when it comes to a good horror film. Whereas, say, zombies or aliens, not so much. Which is not to say that I don't enjoy a zombie film or any of the famous alien films. I mean, how can you not love Sigourney Weaver? But let's talk about The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a 1973 American supernatural horror film directed by William Friedkin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it was produced and written for the screen by William Peter Blatty, based on the 1971 novel of the same name by Blatty. The film stars Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Lee J. Cobb, Kitty Wynn, and Jack McGowan, I really hope I pronounced that correctly, Jason Miller, and Linda Blair. It is the first instalment in the Exorcist film series and follows the demonic possession of 12-year-old Reagan and her mother's attempt to rescue her through an exorcism conducted by 2 Catholic priests. So, despite the book's bestseller status, Blatty, who produced, and Friedkin, his choice for director, had some difficulty casting the film. After turning down, or being turned down, by major stars of the era, they cast Burstyn, a relative unknown, as well as unknowns such as Blair and Miller. Miller being the author of a hit play, but with no film acting experience. The casting choices were vigorously opposed by studio executives at Warner Brothers Studios, and principal photography was also difficult. A fire destroyed the majority of the set, and Blair and Burstyn suffered long-term injuries in on-set accidents. Ultimately, production took twice as long as scheduled and cost more than twice the initial budget. The Exorcist was released in 24 theatres in the United States and Canada in late December 1973. Despite initial mixed critical reviews, audiences flocked to it, waiting in long lines during winter weather, and many doing so more than once. Some viewers suffered adverse physical reactions, fainting or vomiting, to scenes in which the protagonist undergoes a realistic cerebral angiography. I hope I pronounced that right. And later, violently masturbates with a crucifix. Heart attacks and miscarriages were apparently reported. A psychiatric journal published a paper on cinematic neurosis triggered by the film. Many children were allowed to see the film, which led to charges that the MPAA ratings board had accommodated Warner Brothers by giving the film an R rating instead of the X rating they thought that it deserved. In order to ensure its commercial success, several cities attempted to ban it outright or prevent children from attending. The cultural conversation around the film, which also encompassed its treatment of Catholicism, helped it become the first horror film to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. One of 10 Academy Awards it was nominated for, winning for Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Sound. It was the highest grossing R-rated horror film, unadjusted for inflation, until the 2017 release of It, which is also a very, very good film. The Exorcist has had a significant influence on popular culture and has received critical acclaim, with several publications regarding it as one of the greatest horror films ever made. English film critic Mark Kermode named it his favourite film of all time. In 2010, the Library of Congress selected the film to be preserved in its National Film Registry, citing it as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So, in terms of the plot, Lancaster Merrin, a veteran Catholic priest, is on an archaeological dig in the ancient city of Hatra in Iraq. Alerted by a colleague, he finds a sculpture that resembles Pazuzu, a demon of ancient origins with whose history Merrin is familiar. Soon afterwards, after consuming a small white pill, Merrin encounters a statue towering over him in the image of Pazuzu, an omen warning him of a looming confrontation. It's a brilliant start to the film. Meanwhile, in Georgetown, actress Chris McNeil is living on location with her 12-year-old daughter Reagan. She is starring in a film directed by her friend and associate Burke Dennings. During this time, small oddities begin to occur around the house, such as scratching from the attic without a source. After playing with a Ouija board and contacting a supposedly imaginary friend, whom Reagan calls Captain Howdy, Reagan begins acting strangely, using obscene language and exhibiting abnormal strength. Additionally, there is poltergeist-like activity in the home at night. Chris, her mother, hosts a party during which Reagan comes downstairs unannounced and tells the guests, an astronaut, that he will die up there, and then urinates on the floor. Later that night, Reagan's bed begins to shake and levitate violently. Chris consults a number of physicians, putting Reagan for a battery of diagnostic tests, but the doctors find nothing psychologically wrong with her. So one night, when Chris is out, Burke Dennings is babysitting a heavily sedated Reagan. Chris returns to hear that Dennings has died, having fallen out of the window, although this is assumed to have been an accident given Burke's history of heavy drinking. His death is investigated by Lieutenant William Kinderman. Kinderman interviews Chris. He also consults psychiatrist Father Damien Karras, who is a Jesuit priest struggling with his faith. Karras's crisis of faith is precipitated by the death of his mother, which he blames on himself. The doctors, believing that Reagan's aberrations are mostly psychological in origin, recommend an exorcism be performed. Chris arranges a meeting with Karras, who, reluctant to engage spiritually, agrees to at least speak with Reagan. As the two come face to face, Karras and Reagan test each other's wits, although Karras is sceptical of the idea that anything supernatural is happening. Chris tearfully finds herself at a dead end and confides in Karras that Reagan was the one who murdered Dennings, and begs him to find a solution. Over the next couple of days, Karras witnesses Reagan's speaking backward in different languages she does not know, and the phrase "help me" appears to be carved from the inside of her stomach, convincing him she really is possessed by a demon. He implores the church to let him perform an exorcism, but feeling Karras is outmatched, the church calls on Merrin, the guy at the beginning of the film, who was in Iraq. And so Merrin is called to perform the exorcism, while allowing Karras to assist. The ritual begins as a battle of wills with Reagan, performing a series of horrific and vulgar acts. They attempt to exorcise the demon, but the spirit digs in, claiming to be the devil himself. The spirit relentlessly toys with the priest and zeroes in on Karras, sensing his guilt from the passing of his mother. Karras weakens after the demon impersonates his late mother, and is excused by Merrin, who continues the exorcism alone. Once he has gathered his strength, Karras re-enters the room and discovers Merrin dead of a heart attack. After he fails to revive Merrin, the enraged Karras grabs a laughing Reagan and wrestles her to the ground. At Karras's invitation, the demon leaves Reagan's body and takes hold of Karras. In a final moment of strength and self-sacrifice, Karras throws himself out the window before he can harm Reagan, falling to his death down a set of stone steps and defeating the demon at last. Father Dyer, a friend of Karras, happens upon the scene and administers the last rites to Karras. A few days later, Reagan, now back to her normal self, prepares to leave for Los Angeles with her mother. Although Reagan has no apparent recollection of her possession, she is moved by the sight of Dyer's clerical collar to kiss him on the cheek. As the car pulls away, Chris tells the driver to stop, and she gives Father Dyer a medallion that belonged to Karras. After they drive off, Dyer pauses at the top of the stone steps to give Reagan's window one last look, and then turns to walk away. There was also a director's cut ending. In 2000, a version of the film known as the version you've never seen or the extended director's cut, was released. In the ending of this version, when Chris gives Karis's medallion to Daya, Daya places it back in her hand and suggests that she keep it after she and Reagan drive away. Daya pauses at the top of the stone steps before walking away and coming across Kinderman, who narrowly missed Chris and Reagan's departure. Kinderman and Daya begin to develop a friendship. So, as you can see, it's a pretty intense storyline. And yeah, it's just, there are a lot of horror films out there that I could talk about, but this is the best for me. I think in terms of the storyline with Catholicism involved, it always interests me, and so it's something that stayed with me. So yeah, as you can see, I'm coming towards the end of this video. I'm just laying down some adhesive on the back of this postcard, which I believe I got these postcards from the gift shop of, where was it? I want to say it's the Royal Surgeons Museum or something like that. It was many years ago that I went there, and it was a place where they had a museum full of medical, historical medical illustrations, and including jars and jars of, fetuses and like human biology dissections, and it's a bit creepy, but I love that stuff. So yeah, I'm just placing this onto a black mount. This was quite a simple collage. Usually with collages they take me time to do, mainly because of the placement and planning of where I want to put things. That's the bit that takes the longest. I think I'm happy with this collage, although I wish I'd done something a bit different with the severed Edwardian women heads earring. And yeah, they don't quite work for me, but I like it all the same. This glue that I use is brilliant, but sometimes I find it's not sticky enough, hence why I'm pressing down a lot. It's always better that I place my collages back in my sketchbooks, because then they can flatten and dry over time. But the reason I love that glue so much is it's not like PVA. I don't find that it's shiny, and I think it's a matte medium, so it's not technically a glue, but it's really, really good for collage artwork. And I have tried many different types of adhesives, and this one is so far the best. I do need to get some new paper cutters and scalpels though. Craft knife, I mean, not scalpel. Because they are becoming a bit blunt. I'm a bit heavy-handed on the craft mat, and I found I've chipped away at the craft knife blade. To be fair, I think they're quite cheap, so I should probably invest in a more well-made craft knife. So there we have it. That is my collage, and that is the end of my video. Thank you very much for listening to me waffle on about The Exorcist, and I hope you have a happy October, happy Halloween. Goodbye.